Hey guys, and welcome to another episode where today we're going to take some time and look at typography, types and uses in the media. Typography is simply another word for font or the style of lettering used within a design. There are two basic types of fonts, serif and sans serif, each with their own characteristics and use. Mode of address, as we know from previous episodes, can be very quickly controlled by what types of decisions we make as producers. It really can affect the whole look and feel of the product. Get your fonts wrong and things are going to look very, very bad. So we begin by looking at the first type, serif, almost sounding like sheriff. Sheriff, like the police, old Western term. It's a serious type of font. It's very traditional with decorative lines, typically at the top and bottom of the letters. Think Times New Roman. You can see here with an H as an example with Times New Roman, and in particular, you'd refer to the tops and tails, these extra little lines which you can see. These decorative lines are called serifs, hence the term for the font. Serif typography is often used in newsprint, books and traditional print, and when the tone needs to be a lot more serious or formal. Find serif used maybe a lot in horror film posters, or films with a historic narrative or element of factual content. Serif fonts are not typically used on phones or tablet types of devices. It's just the way we're moving into more of a digital world. We're used to reading on screens with small fonts today. You'll notice that serif fonts almost create like a line upon the bottom, which audiences apparently find easier to follow. And this is a reason it's used in large blocks of text, so for example, newspapers or books. The second type of font is referred to as sans serif, but most people don't repeat the serif at the end, so they just call it sans. So we have either sans or serif. Sans is a more informal, modern, less serious looking font, often perhaps thick with bolder lines and curves which look very aesthetically pleasing. Sans will be used with capital letters to create that wow or shock value in film poster design. Have a look at action adventure posters and see how repetitive some of their titles look in font design. We can't blame the designers here, they're simply creating the right and consistent mode of address. Choosing which font to use, as kind of mentioned earlier, will create that mode of address and tone very quickly. And the same thing goes for mastheads, titles maybe on magazines. Are they going to be serious or fun, traditional or modern? Have a look at magazines and see the differences or similarities used depending on the magazine genre. Some further good useful tips when thinking about font is of course how letters themselves, the characters, can be spaced apart. This is referred to as tracking. With tight tracking, like in this poster here, we get a very compacted looking title, bold and solid. There are no gaps. It looks joined and strong. There's clear connotations here, clear suggestions that there's an element of strength and power. A great font to suit the genre of this film. Loose tracking, on the other hand, can often send a very different message. It connotes something very different. The characters are spread apart, almost distant from each other, maybe separate. Are the designers trying to connote something here? Take Dunkirk, for example. A great film, but the loose tracking shows the letters again spread apart and distant, but why? Is this accidental or on purpose? Again, the designer has done this for a reason. What meaning is being created by doing this? Well, the sans font is bold and thick and strong, but the letters are spread apart, which could change the meaning perhaps. Is there a sense of weakness or lack of togetherness? We know from history and we know from the narrative that the men at Dunkirk were of course separated from the ones they loved, desperate to get home. They were returning in boats separately and not as a unit, not as the group that they'd like to maybe have come back as. So perhaps that's what's being suggested here with the loose tracking. Again, it's all theoretical, but it's interesting to look at the connotations of why decisions are being made. As always, think about the use of could of or could have in your terminology and language here. It's great to see designers, isn't it, use tracking in this example to change the mode of address, to change the mood in the advertising of the product. We also need to know that designers will maybe alter the distance between the lines of text, not just the distance between the characters, but the actual lines themselves. And this is referred to as leading. Large chunks of text, think maybe columns in a newspaper or a magazine, can look quite smart and more defined with tighter leading, closing up maybe unnecessary gaps between them. Be careful maybe not to do it too much though, because too tight and you won't be able to read the text. Often we'll see cover lines on magazines or headings and subheadings in design with tight leading to keep the content close to each other because it's maybe relatable. Sometimes it's purely because with tight leading we can save some space and maybe squeeze in another title or cover line or even picture. So maybe it's done for design purposes. There are thousands of fonts to choose from, and maybe having style options such as bold, italics and underlined will also change the look or the mode of address towards your audience very quickly. Make sure you find the right font and create that consistent house style. Here's a quick example, and we've all probably seen or used the font style Arial or Arial, depending on how you pronounce it. Give it a little size, make it bold, tighten it up, tighten that tracking, and then write the word bench, and all of a sudden you've got a very well-known clothing brand. Clever. Burger King used the font Rockwell previously, and you'll notice that again, it's a very iconic font. And again, with quite tight tracking and a little bit of boldness, you create the Burger King house style just by altering the style of the text. Again, companies, once they've created their style, will stick to it. It becomes iconic, recognizable. Children's media in particular is a good example to case study, as that audience is of course still learning to read and write. So maybe using fonts which appear almost handwritten are often quite useful to model to them. Maybe did you ever wonder actually, why are most of your worksheets at school, or perhaps in a lot of primary school printing, they use the famous Comic Sans font? And it's even interesting, isn't it, from the title, Comic Sans. It's easy to read, it's a handwritten font, and that's again why often it's chosen for younger audiences. Sometimes we can see designers use a hybrid, a combination of two or more of the two types of font, and it's what's referred to as a slab serif, which, here's an example, is a serif font, but it has elements of sans. Notice here the slab serif fonts look quite traditional. They have the tops and tails, the serifs, but they also have a modern feel to them. They've got curves. These were very popular in the 19th century and will often be used in advertising today. Maybe you'll take some time to have a quick look at your DVD collection at home, or browse a particular genre of magazine next time you're in the shops. See what fonts they all use and question maybe why they all look the same. Are their designers lazy, or do they just simply know what they're doing and what type of font they should be using? Therefore, the same rules apply time and time again. Guys, I hope this has been useful at looking at typography, how it might be useful in your analysis or even creating products. Get the font right and you've created that style. What mode of address do you want to push towards your audience? Guys, thanks for subscribing and supporting the content. Do feel free to send in questions and comments. And until next time, of course, take care and see you soon.